Namaste everyone. My name is
Hello
Ranjita
everyone.
Raghunath and welcome to Artsy Clicking session 3. This is all about exposure, and as someone has said, exposure is the soul of photography. And what better panelists? My name is Ranjita Raghunath and welcome to Artsy Clicking session 3. So there is a sort of a lag. I believe there is a sort of a lag, but we will not mind. We will pull through. So what we are going to do today is we're going to talk about exposure. We're going to talk about various forms of exposure, and we have this wonderful panelists here with us. One is the very famous Mr. Arvind Patole. Arvind Patole, if you get to know him, you would understand what a multitasker he is. He loves photography. He is into photography. He loves playing the guitar, and he has now turned his interest basically into conserving wildlife. He's creating photographs, he's creating documentaries, he's all about conservation, right? Global warming and whatnot. So he's a multitasker, a jack of all trades. And we have our second panelist with us, that is Mr. Hari Prasad. Welcome, sir. Hari
Thank
Prasad
you.
is
Thank you for
from
calling me.
Bangalore and he's an electronic engineer. He's an exotic mixture, I have to say. He loves photography. He is a blogger. He has his own YouTube blog, right? You have a YouTube channel called Jab We Talk. I hope I'm right. And he loves writing
Yes.
poetry, and he's just written, I think, a couple of more than 20-25 poems and much more, I believe. So
More than
you
100.
can tell us all about your photographs. Without further ado, let us begin the session with Mr. Arvind Patole. Sir, let us begin.
Thank you, Ranjita. Thank you, Ranjita. Thank you, Hari sir. There's a little disturbance on the audio side, but we will continue. We'll start. Today's session, friends, we are going to talk on exposure. And as we all know, in photography, exposure is the most important basic necessity which you should know if you're going to click good images. If you want good images, exposure is what is very much necessary to study and understand. What is exposure now? Exposure is something that we, after seeing a photograph, we look at the photograph, look at the image, and we find the overall brightness of the image, whether it is very bright or whether it is dark. So that is what is termed as exposure. If it is dark, we call it underexposed. If it is bright, we call it overexposed. So this is the factor which is the basic of your hobby, that is photography, because photography is nothing but painting with light, and exposure is nothing but controlling your light coming in through the lens and falling on your film or camera sensor, which captures the image. Okay, next one, please. Yes. So like I told you, images, how we capture images. When the image you're taking up image of a bird, or if you're taking an image of an object or any subject, that is your friend or anyone, the light which it radiates, which is reflected from that person, from that bird, passes through the lens and of the camera, and in the lens there is something known as an aperture ring. It passes through that aperture ring, and then in the camera body there is something known as a shutter, and after passing through the shutter, the light falls on the sensor or on the roll. If you're using a film camera, it's the roll, or if you're using a digital camera, it's the sensor, and the image is taken. Image is exposed, and we say that the image is taken. So this is the process of capturing images with reflected light from the subjects. So as I told you, light which is reflected passes through the camera and through the aperture. and it passes again through the shutter. So all these three things control the amount of light entering the camera and exposing your image. And these three things you have to master, or these three things you have to understand and control to get a proper exposure. In normal terms, if you meet any photographer, they will call this as the three pillars of photography. What are the three pillars of photography? As you can see on the screen, the first is the aperture, the second pillar is the ISO, the third is the shutter speed. Okay, so all these three will, you have to balance out their settings to get a proper exposure. These three things will give you a good exposure, but also they have got a certain side effect by using overusing these three things. So that we'll talk on later. So we'll go to the next slide. Yes, here you can see this image. It's a graphic. We have just, for your understanding, we have done this a simple graphic. You can see the left section is what is termed as a dull, dark, underexposed image. If your three parameters, which is the aperture, shutter, and ISO, are not controlled to give a good exposure, that is to give the average exposure, your image is either underexposed or overexposed. Now, in this image, we have shown you three sections of one image. The center one is properly exposed image, where you have balanced those three elements, aperture, shutter, and ISO, and got a good, correctly exposed image in the center that is shown. If there is an imbalance, suppose in either of the three, then you might get an image which is underexposed or overexposed. So if it is underexposed, your image will be dull or dark. And if it is overexposed, your image will be washed out, like bright, and all the highlights will be lost. Similarly, in the darker underexposed image, all the details in the shadows are lost. So even if you go to edit them later on in post editing, you cannot retrieve those details which are lost in the shadows or which are lost in the overexposed parts. So that's why whenever we take an image, we try to get the right and proper exposure in the first place only. So leaving post editing exposure correction minimum. Next slide, please. Now we were talking about the three pillars. The first pillar which we talked about is the aperture. So what is an aperture? Like I showed in the first slide, the light enters the lens and passes through a ring in the lens. That ring can be closed down or can be opened up. Means the diameter of that ring can be minimized to a pinhole type thing or can be kept maximum. So that is known as aperture. And in aperture, we have got certain numbers that is known as f numbers. So f number 2.8, or we can start with f 2.8, that is the brightest image you will get because it is the widest opening in the lens. And if you go to f 5.6 or f 11, it will be a narrow opening, a small opening in the lens, which will allow less light to go in and expose the image. So you can see over here that if I keep the aperture at 2.8, I might get more light in the image when I click the image, and the image might be overexposed. If I keep f11, which has got a smaller opening, light entering and exposing the image might be less, and I might get a dark image that is underexposed. So here I have to keep the optimum aperture to get the right image. Now, like I told you, all these three settings also have got a side effect. So what is the side effect? It can be used to your benefits. That is, if you control the aperture, you can control the depth of field. You get something known as the zone of focus, the area of sharpness. But we will come to that at a later stage. When I show you some images, I'll be able to explain them better. Next one, please. The second pillar. The second pillar we talked about was shutter speed. Now, what is shutter speed? There is something, some mechanism in the camera body which opens when you click the shutter. When you depress the shutter release button, it opens a curtain which is covering the sensor. It's like a door. When you press the shutter release, the door opens and allows the light coming through the lens, passing through the aperture to expose the sensor or the film roll. Now what happens if I keep the door open for a long time? More light will come in. If I keep the door open for a very fraction of a second, short time, that is duration, less light will come in. So what happens over here again, the amount of light coming in is controlled by the shutter. So we have got two parameters over here. One was the aperture. We can control the light coming in by keeping the aperture wide, either very big or very small. That is wider opening or narrow opening. And here shutter also can control the amount of light by keeping it open for a longer time. That is using a slow shutter, we call it in photographic terms. Or if you want to cut down the light coming in, you can use a higher shutter speed, that is a faster shutter. So the light coming in and exposing the sensor of the film is very short, that is fractions of a second. So that is how it is. So if you see in this also parameters in the photographs down over there on the right side, you can see a scene over there. On the left, you can see it is, the exposure seems perfect. If you go on the right, it is looking a little dull. So it means that the shutter speed used was high, which restricted the amount of light coming in to expose the film or the sensor to give a proper exposure. So we have to be careful on this also. So these three factors which are there, the two we have already talked about, aperture and shutter, are to be used, controlled in such a way that you get best exposure in your photographs. Yes, next please. Okay. Many a times you see ISO is something which helps you and also can spoil your images, because there is something known as ISO is an artificial way of increasing your sensitivity of the sensor. We increase the ISO means we make the sensor more sensitive to light. So in case of where you're taking images in dull light, in the as shown in this image, we are showing an image taken of the stars in the night sky. So at you can see the 6 images on the bottom right. The one image exposed at ISO 100, that is a low ISO setting, that is less sensitive to light. The sensor is less sensitive at 100, it is less sensitive to light. So when we click an image of the moon and the stars, we can barely see any image in that form, okay, because the light coming in is very less. You look at the image on the right of it, which is ISO 200. Over there, you can see again, image is not exposed properly, means you can't make out the details. But if you go down to the last slide on the bottom right at ISO 3200, you can see the moon and the stars quite clearly. So here we are using the ISO for our benefit to get the proper exposure and to show the night scene sky. Okay, so this is where you can use these three pillars to get proper exposure. So we have to do the optimal setting of these three pillars, that is the aperture, shutter, and ISO, to get good results, good exposure. Okay, next one, please, ma'am. Yes. So now once you have understood these three pillars, so to get the right exposure, if we move any of the pillars, we have to compensate that movement by using different settings for the other two pillars. So suppose I've got a good image with aperture at 5.6. So if I change that aperture setting from the normal opening to a narrow opening, that is if I go to f8, because f8 will give you very less light. 5.6 was giving you good light, but at f8 and f11 the light is reduced because the opening in the lens is reduced, so light passing through the lens is reduced. What is an aperture? In short, it is like your tap. We have got a tap in the bathroom and we are filling a bucket. If my tap nozzle is 1 inch, it takes say about 1 minute to fill the bucket. Now if I reduce the tap to half an inch, the time taken to fill the bucket will be double that, because I've reduced that time, because I've reduced the diameter of the pipe, the water flow. So what will happen? The bucket will fill only after 2 minutes. If I open that, if I use a bigger diameter pipe, suppose now I was using 1 inch pipe diameter and I was getting proper bucket full in 1 minute, but I use a 2 inch pipe. So now what will happen? The bucket will overflow in 1 minute. So that will be overexposing the image. So I will have to reduce the duration of the tap left open. So that is how the shutter works. The tap, you can say the pipe opening is the diameter of the aperture, and the duration you leave the tap open is the shutter speed to get the optimum water fill in the bucket. It should not be flowing overflowing, or it should not be less also. It should be perfect. Okay. So that is it how you can understand aperture and shutter. The relation is by thinking of a tap and you're filling a bucket of water, leave the tap on for a minute, the bucket fills in a minute. If I increase the diameter of the tap, I have to reduce the open time of the tap remaining open. If I decrease the diameter of the tap, I have to increase the time duration for the tap to run the and fill the bucket. Okay, so that is how this is. So this is the way we use these two parameters, aperture and shutter, to get a proper exposure. Like I told you, we will go to the next slide. Yes. So when shooting in manual mode, there is something known in the cameras. There are some modes are there for shooting. So normally when we buy a camera, we use auto mode. There's a green button with A on it, or there is a square green one. So everyone will start using a DSLR in auto mode because we don't understand the settings of the camera that time when we buy it. But slowly, when you attend or when you read something, some books on exposure control or these type of workshops, if you attend, where you can get the knowledge, we can start using the camera in aperture mode, shutter priority mode, or manual mode. So now here what happens in manual mode, you have to set the three parameters yourself. So looking at the subject, looking at the amount of light, judging the amount of light, you have to balance your three pillars. That is the ISO, the shutter speed, and the aperture. Now what happens, the drawbacks which I was telling you, there is some drawback or the side effects of these three pillars is if you change your ISO at 100 ISO, if you keep that sensitivity at minimum, that is 100, there is something known as a digital noise. That digital noise is reduced when you take images at a lower ISO. But if you increase the ISO to 3200 or 6400 or 12800, it will induce a lot of digital noise. If you have seen roll films in the earlier days, if anyone has used roll films, you will understand that time when we used to buy films, we used to get ASA numbers, ASA or DIN numbers. DIN was German, ASA was American Standard numbers on the roll films, which were denoting the speed of the film. That is, you used to get 100 ASA, 200 ASA, 400 ASA, 800 ASA, 1600 ASA, which was very rare because that time 1600 ASA films we would rarely find and use. So normal was 100 and 200, up to 400 you could get. So that is nothing but the increase in sensitivity of the film material. What happens in roll films, the sensitivity was increased by using silver halides which were of bigger size, and in 100 ISO the silver halides used were of smaller size. So when you expose through 100 you could get a very good smooth image when you print it out on a paper. But if you expose in a 400 or a 800 or 1600 ASA film, because of the silver highlight grains, you could get that grainy effect in that image. So that is what was there. And in digital, we call it the digital noise. In digital cameras, when you increase the ISO to 1600, 3200 or 6400, you get something like a grain, and that is known as digital noise. So we have to see that we don't get digital noise. So what parameters we can change are only shutter speed or aperture. So for handheld, we had seen in the earlier sessions, for handheld photography, we should use the reciprocal of the focal length of the camera, what you're using the lens. Suppose you're using a 200 lens, your shutter speed should be 1 upon 250 minimum for handheld. If anything lower than 2 upon 250, you should use a tripod. So that is why we can use these two settings, but we should understand what is the safe way to avoid camera blur, shake, or get a image shake in it or movement. Okay, so we must see that we freeze the action. So that is why we can keep the shutter speed as per the focal length of the lens used on the camera. So here we can see if you're using landscape, what you require in landscape is something which is sharp from foreground, that is about 8 to 10 feet, to infinity. So when you set your aperture at f11 or f16, you get a bigger zone of focus. That is depth of field, we call it in photography. Zone of focus is the sharpness from 8 to 10 feet to infinity. So in landscape photography, in interiors, architectural photography, we want things to be sharp. So we tend to use an aperture of f11, f16 or f22, but f11 to f16 is normally used. So when we use f11 or f16, we are reducing the opening in the lens, which reduces the light passing through the lens and exposing the sensor. So that time we will have to use a slower shutter speed to compensate for the loss of light reaching the sensor. So if you, like I told you about the universal law of handheld photography, if you're using a lens of say 50 mm, your handheld photographs to be sharp should be 1 upon 50 should be the shutter speed. So you must check if you're using f16 and if your shutter speed is coming to 1 upon 50, it's fine. If it is coming to 1 upon 30, then there can be a camera shake. So that is where you should use an tripod over there. In case you don't have a tripod, then you might have to change the ISO to a higher value so as to get the shutter speed at 1 upon 50. Likewise, also same thing if you're exposing, if you want to take an image of a bird, if you want to take an image of a person, portrait, then we want only that person or that bird or that subject to be sharp, even if it's a still life. So that thing only should be sharp, and the person who sees that image, his eyes should not roam around in the image, so only one thing in that image which should be sharp, and the person who's watching it, his eyes should focus onto that. So what we do that time, we open up the aperture. What happens when you open up the aperture means you keep a wide aperture, that is 2.8 to, if a lens allows 1.8 also you can keep, which will only give the image which you're taking, the subject will be sharp, whereas the background will be thrown out of focus. So there'll be a blur, a smooth background, wherein the image, whenever someone sees that image, his eyes will only go to the subject and not stray around on the image. Next one, please, ma'am. Here we can see the use of these three pillars. This images are by Dr. Hanspal. So the first image is of a parrot. You see the wings, you can see all the primaries are there, secondary wings, feathers, you can see very clearly, the tails, feathers, you can see very clearly. Here it is in good light, it was a bright sunny day, so he could afford to use a higher shutter speed. So for freezing that and getting sharpness in your image, he has used a shutter speed anything about 1 upon 1500 to 1 upon 2000 of a second he has used to get this sharp image. So here he has kept the aperture open and he has used the shutter priority mode to get a very sharp image of a fast moving subject. So you can freeze a fast moving subject by using higher shutter speed. Okay, so that is also there. When you want to freeze any action, any high speed action is there, then you require a higher shutter speed to freeze that. Okay, the second image which is in the center, it's of a landscape. The beautiful Himalayas are there in the background, snow-clad Himalayas are there, and also you can see the high altitude trees are there in the front. So here he has used is something known as a smaller aperture. A aperture, maybe it might be f11, f16 to give a sharper, like I told you in landscape photography, we use f11 or f16 to give you a sharper zone of field, that is the depth of field is sharp right from say 8 to 10 feet to infinity. So here you can see even the clouds which are miles away are also sharp. The hills also are sharp. The snows, the valleys, everything is crisp over here, and also trees are sharp. So here he has used f11, f16 to give you a greater depth of field. Here also it was a good day, a nice lighted day, so he could compromise on using a smaller aperture opening, that is f11, f16 to get a good exposure. And the third one, which is of a bulbul, you can see a red vented bulbul is there. If you look closely, you see, the bulbul is sharp, but if you see on the background is out of focus. We call it bokeh. That's a bokeh over there. It is diffused. That is the depth of field is very shallow. So he has used a wider aperture over here. Maybe he has used 2.8, maybe he has used f4, because f4 2.8 gives a wider, means it gives a shallow depth of field, and your background is thrown out of focus. So when a person sees this image, his eye will only go on the bulbul and not go on the background where the trees, the clutter is there. But you can see the clutter is so smooth that your eyes will stay on the bulbul only and on the branches only around him. It will not go in the background. You will not lose the image by walking around on the scene. Okay, so your eyes are captured by the bulbul because only the bulbul, the subject is in focus. The rest is thrown out of focus using a wide aperture, that is maybe f2.8 or f4. So whenever you take portraits, you should use f2.8 or f4 and focus on the eyes and take images. Whenever you take landscapes, you should keep the aperture at f11, f16 to get a good depth of field, zone of focus. And wherever you're using a high speed, whether there's a lot of action, you use a high shutter speed. Here, there is something known as the exposure meter on all digital cameras. We try to keep the exposure in the center. If you can see, there's a zero. The light meter is there written, and there's a zero dial over there. So we try to keep it on zero, so to get a proper exposure. But if you move on to the left side of that dial, if you go on the left side of that linear dial, it will be giving you a darker image. If you go on the right side, it will give you a brighter image. So you can see that if the light is more, you try to get it to the zero side. Okay, so you must every time look into this and take your images. Though at times we can have this meter can fool you if it's a brightly lit image or if it is a spotlighted image. So that is where you have to set, if you have to see how you use the metering. Here, like I told you, if the meter goes on to the left side, it will be an underexposed image. See here, it is showing the bar is on 2, so the light entering and exposing the image was very less, so it was underexposed. So the image will be dark, dull. In the middle, it is shown properly exposed at 0, and on the bottom there is a image which is showing at 1.2, 1.5 or 1.7 it is, so it is overexposed, so it is too bright, so you must try to keep it at 0. These things you can change as per the subject. If the subject is light, means if it's a white bird, you have to go to the positive side. If it's a dark bird, you have to go to the negative side, but that will come on in the next session. When we'll talk about that. Next one, please. Okay, these are the metering modes. There is something as a matrix metering, which will take metering, sensing the light from the whole image viewfinder, and it will give an average reading, so to get a proper exposure. Then we'll go to the next one, that is the center weighted. The center weighted one will take the reading of the light only from the center, so it will give you a spot metering, so it will expose as per the light what is there in the center and give you an exposure. And then this is known as spot metering. Spot is a small dot 1 degree to 5 degrees in cameras. It depends from camera to camera, so only from that point it will take, and this is the most accurate of the metering. So if you have got a very tricky subject in front of you, then you can use this, take the metering of that subject, set your aperture, shutter, and ISO as per this to give you a proper balance, and you can take spot metering and do it. But for landscapes and all that, you can take evaluative metering. But for certain, like I said, white bird, black bird, any contrasted this thing is that you can go for spot metering. Okay. Yes. Next one, please. Okay. Yeah. Hari sir will just.
Yeah. So hi everybody.
Yes, now it's over to Hari sir.
Okay, thank you, Ranjita. Thank you, Arvind sir. It was such a great session from your side. So, as you told, it's all about the game is about aperture, shutter, exposure, and ISO. So, some of the pics which I have taken, I will just explain a bit about those pics. So, as you can see, the first pic is a car, and this was basically taken on a very low light condition because it was raining and it was cloudy. So the rain had just stopped. The cloud was still there, but the car was quite shining because of the rain. So I wanted to capture the mood, and the mood was effect. However, the light was very less, so I used a very low shutter speed because the car was moving. But I tried to expose, so I had to actually increase the ISO a little bit. And this is the pic that I got. It shows the shining leaves as well as the tree a bit on the road, as well as the darkness of the rain, the clouds. So that's how it came out. And the next
Anissa, there is
picture
a sort of a disturbance over at your
We
end.
we can't hear him
Okay.
properly.
Can you hear
Okay,
me
it's
now
It's much
properly?
better now.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
better,
it's much
better.
better now. Thank you, sir.
Fine. So I will just explain the first pic again. Basically, the first pic is was taken on a rainy, cloudy day. It was around 4 o'clock, so the light was also less, and I wanted to capture the car because it was quite artistic to have a look at a red color in a black background. So I had to play around a bit with exposure, and because the car was moving, I had very little time, so the shutter speed also had to be very high. So I think I had the shutter speed about 1/120, and the light exposure also was supposed to be high. So I increased the ISO, and this is how the pic got. I got the pic, and it was quite artistic in that way. The second pic is totally a dark. It was a totally a dark night, and I was just walking around the road, and I couldn't see much, but the light that was coming out, shining on the road, which was already wet. So I wanted an artistic picture. I was not much worried about the clarity. So I tried to actually play around with the shutter speed here. So the shutter speed was not very high. I kept it low. So it was about 1/15. So that's how this picture got. And I just tried to make sure that the raindrops were also seen. So I tried to be just below the lamp. So you can see the light shining, which shows the raindrops coming down. So it looks quite attractive and feels like a painting. Next pictures, madam. So these are some of the most loved pics which I have taken. The first pic looks like a torch, but if you see properly, it is actually a building. And I was standing beside two more buildings of the same type. So the light was coming out from the sky and exposing a bit of the front building only. But I wanted to make sure that it looks very artistic, and so I tried to reduce the ISO so that the buildings in my side doesn't get exposed too much, and only the front part of the building gets exposed. So it looks like a torch, and it gives a very artistic view. So this is one of my favorite pics. The other one was actually taken in the late evening at around 6:30 when the light was almost going down, and the sky was turning little bluish because of the darkness, and I wanted to expose it a bit more so that the leaves are clear. So here I exposed, I put the shutter speed very low, and again I tried to play with ISO here. And this picture was one of my favorites because it shows two trees and the leaves that are just getting connected, and you can see the small borders between the two trees. So it also gives a very nice artistic picture. And because I'm a poet, I like to see things in an artistic way. So I keep playing around with the light and the settings of the camera. So this is one of the favorite pics that I have taken. This was quite a challenge. I had to do a lot of trials, and I had to do a lot of waiting because you can see that I wanted something lively here, because just taking the pictures of the long grasses was quite an easy thing. But I wanted to make this picture very interesting, and I wanted to make sure that something flies. So this was a real challenge, and I was very happy when I got uh, crow just flying around, and thankfully it came just in the middle, and I kept the shutter speed very low, I mean very high, so that I can capture it at the very moment. And this was in the around 3 p.m. So the light was very good, and it was shining through the grasses, so it gave a very beautiful wide angle picture. And this is also one of my favorite pics.
Yes, 1 minute. So
Yes. Yes, Arvind sir, you wanted to say something?
about the earlier picture, I just wanted to comment on the earlier picture. Uh, Here we can see, that you have used a higher aperture number, that is maybe f16 you must have used, or higher, so that you could get the
Yes.
grass also sharp, and the crow wings also sharp, when it's flying across.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you
Yes.
were blessed because it was a 3 o'clock light. You were getting good side
Right.
lighting, and that is why you could get the highlights also in the grass combs over there. It's a very
Exactly.
beautiful image, an image which is showing live in it. Of course, there might be a
Yes.
slight breeze also, because these grass comb must be also moving in the wind, but the high shutter speed has frozen that and the crows, and it's a very good image of yours.
True. True. True.
Thank you,
Thank you,
thank
sir.
you, thank you,
And
thank you.
yeah, I had to wait a long time. I tried about 10 shots before I got this. This is actually almost a 1 hour practice for me to get that shot. So usually nature shots are quite, we have to have a lot of patience.
Yes,
So yes, these shots were quite easy, but the only thing is I wanted to make sure that the colors and the background actually are contrasting. So the idea was the first one is a chair which is having a yellow color, and a tree which is in the background has to be showing a kind of a cool and calm place where people can enjoy and sit. So this picture gives a kind of a lazy and cool environment. So that was the idea that I had when I took it, and it was about night. So this light is actually not a natural light. It was from a street light just next to the seat. So I wanted to make sure that I don't uh, get too much of exposure of the background, and the colors also are very nice and natural. So I had to keep the aperture pretty low. About, I think I took about f11 was my aperture, and exposure I'm not very much sure, but it came out very well. The other picture is the temple. It was again around 6:30, which was about to go. It was about to getting night. So the temple is actually surrounded by a ground. So I wanted to make sure that the ground's earthy color also comes along with the sky. So I had to do a little bit more exposure, and it was very a short period of 5 or 6 minutes that this light kind of light exposure is available. So I had to make sure that I could get it, and this is one of the other beautiful picture that I took.
yes, beautiful images.
Thank you.
Arvind sir, would you like to comment on these pictures?
I would only, in one line, I would like to comment that Hari sir's images, I have got a lot of pattern he displays. He has an eye for patterns, okay? And he has an
Yes.
eye for contrasty colors to show. Like in the first shot, he has
Exactly.
shown the red car against the dull background. When it's monsoon time, the light is dull, everything looks dull. And unless you enjoying the rain, it is everything is dull when you are looking at it only. So here the bright car red color brightens up the scene. The second one also of the rains drops which are falling at the slow shutter speed. He's tried, he has shown that the rain intensity by showing the movement of the raindrops in the sky. And in the bottom
Yes.
yellow bench, the yellow bench on the street light, and the shadow it is casting on the back over there, the down, and also the pavement lines and the tree vertical lines. All, he's using the lines, the patterns, and the colors the best I can say. Good images,
I
Hari.
Thank
believe
you,
he
sir.
has
Very good.
some sort of obsession with
Thank you.
symmetry and
Yes.
Yes,
pattern, as
yes.
you said, as
Yes.
well as
Yes.
colors,
Yes.
brilliant colors.
Yes. 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 Brilliant
Yes,
colors
yes.
he's using. Yes.
I
Thank you,
always
Hari sir.
like
Very
to
nice
see
image.
symmetry. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much for calling me.
All right. So thank you both. It's almost time to wind up. For the ones who are not able to catch up with us, let me once again thank the panelists here, Mr. Arvind Patole and Mr. Hari Prasad. If you do not
Thank
know
you.
anything about them, let me tell you something before I wind up this session. Arvind Patole, he is a wildlife photographer. He is into nature conservation and he loves to create awareness through his videos. And of course, Hari Prasad, he is a vlogger, poet, slash photographer. I don't know what inspired him, but I believe we can leave that for another session. Now, it would not be right on my part to not acknowledge two other members. I would have to say two legends. That is, one is Dr. Hanspal, and the real trooper behind the effort of Artsy session, that would be Dr. Archana Tandon. So thank you all for being here today. I hope you all enjoyed it. Uh, and I believe it's time for everyone to have a good meal. So thank you once again for joining.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. Thank you.
if you're like me, please enjoy your lovely weekend with lots and lots of unhealthy food for a change. Forget about being, being stuck to healthy diet. Forget it for this weekend. Live life, enjoy, take photos whenever possible, and have fun. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much for
Thank
calling
you.
me. Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you. Thank you.